Welcome to the All Eers podcast, powered by HD Media.
All right, everyone, it's postseason baseball time here in the state of West Virginia and beyond, and this is the All Eers podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Kennedy. Thank you all for joining us. However you may be listening to us, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as well. You can find us on our website by going to wvgazettemail.com for all WVU coverage. And again, baseball season is upon us still. We are in the postseason leg of this year, and we are pleased to be joined by the head baseball coach of the West Virginia Mountaineers, head coach Steve Sabins, and they're coming off a series victory over the weekend to conclude the regular season against the TCU Horned Frogs. And Coach, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks a ton for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's kind of work our way out and work our way in. And let's start with the series victory over the weekend. You guys split the first two games, but then you won on Saturday to take the series. Importance of that series and ending on a high note to end the regular season, especially after coming off a really emotional series against Kansas.
I think it was huge. Kind of continued our momentum. We had swept Kansas State at home, and then we went on the road and swept Kansas, who ended up winning our conference. They were the number one team in the league when we went down to Lawrence. And so to be able to sweep the number one team on the road, who was a top 10 ranked team in the country, was really big for our program and kind of the analytics that go into choosing these postseason tournament and hosts. And then to be able to come back and play a TCU squad who is uber talented, incredible recruiting base, great budget, high-end NIL team that has a track record at Omaha and first rounders and high-level success. To be able to win a series at home against that team was certainly special. That was 8 series wins out of the 10 in this league, and then we mixed in a couple sweeps. So we broke the program record for conference wins on that final day with 21, and just a good way to end the regular season. It was raining and a little bit miserable, and we trailed by 2 in the 8th, and so to be able to come back in front of our home fans and win a big game, it was huge. And I think a lot of these decisions at the end of the year come down to a game or two, and so every game really matters.
You might actually be the unofficial governor of Kansas. I mean, you sweep Kansas State at home, then you sweep Kansas on the road in Lawrence. You just kind of just said, hey, listen, all due respect to the fine folks of Kansas, we're just going to come in, hey, unofficial governor.
It was really good, and those weeks back to back were special for us. And you know, a lot of times it's about how you're playing. If your team's hot, if your team's in a good spot, where are the other teams? How are they doing? Kansas was unbelievable. They had run like 17 straight games, and before we played them, they lost an extra inning game on Tuesday. It was like the first time they had lost a game in a month. And then we were able to kind of continue that streak with them. So baseball's a momentum sport, and it's about when you get guys and if you're hot. And so we were certainly able to kind of get warm there for a while.
Yeah, you guys have especially gotten warmer in the last leg of the regular season. Not to, put more hurt on that wound from a couple of weeks ago, but between April 21st and April 26th, you guys went 1-3, including that loss to Pitt at home. And then since then, you guys have gone 9-1. You mentioned the sweep over Kansas State and the sweep over Kansas. You beat Marshall, then you go 2-3 against TCU. You guys seem to be playing probably your better baseball at this point, do you feel, or are you guys still trying to figure out where you guys are at entering the Big 12 tournament play?
Yeah, definitely our best baseball, and the most consistent our lineup has been, for the last month or so. We essentially had the same lineup, 1 through 9, similar batting order. The pitching staff roles have been a little bit more clear, but in general, it was just the most complete, consistent regular season that we've had. Ironically, we won the league last year with 19 wins. We had 21 this year, right? And so we played better in conference this season, and we're more consistent. We got really hot last year and won a bunch of games in a row, but in general, we've just been very consistent, winning series, winning midweek games, playing good baseball, and that's been like the foundation of that has been pitching and defense for us this year. Those have been really, really high end for us.
Yeah, kind of expand a little bit more on your defense and your pitching because, again, going back to the last 10 games, you guys have given up 22 runs in these last 10 games, so right around or a little less than 2.5 runs a game for your for your opposing foe. But expand
insane.
on your defense and your pitching. What has allowed those two aspects of baseball for you all been working efficiently, especially in these last 10 games?
I think a lot of it has to do with pitchers' health and freshness, and then obviously just development over the course of the season. But we have a lot of depth, so we were the number one ranked team in the Big 12 in pitching. We had 3 all-conference, first-team all-conference pitchers that will be announced later today. And so when you have multiple pitchers that are high-end and quality that you trust, it means that you don't have to whip the horse too often, right? You're not bringing the same bullpen arm into 3 games in a row. I don't think we've done that all season. And so there's certain years where you just don't have that level of talent. And so sometimes you limp into the final games of the season. Guys are just beat up. It's a long season. We played 56 regular season games, for God's sakes. So you just it's about health and recovery and how guys are bouncing back late in the year. So I think that consistency of pitching and then just how well they've done has allowed guys to remain fresh.
You mentioned your bullpen, especially your starting rotation when you enter a weekend series earlier in the season, and maybe even back in the preseason as well. With where this pitching group is at from where we were in the first couple of weeks of the regular season to now entering Big 12 tournament play, where do you think that group collectively has made the biggest stride or the biggest growth in their game?
Man, probably individuals with specific pitches and their pitch usage and their arsenal. So like the actual pitches and their shapes and their velocities. Probably the biggest emergence would be Ian Korn, who pitched some early on, but not as big of a role. And then he really grabbed onto a great reliever role. But then we've started him in multiple games. He started against Cincinnati. We won that game. He started against TCU. We won that game. So we just have this like very versatile senior who's gotten better and has really elevated the pitching staff as a whole and clipped off a lot of innings. Max Yell had never started a game in his career before this season, and he's the best pitcher in the league. So we've just had some individuals that have stepped up in a huge way. Chanson Cole's a Division II transfer in his second year of college that had never played, obviously, Division I baseball, and he's one of the top 3 starters in the league. So you just have these guys that have stepped up and gotten so much better. So to be able to like project on paper, okay, Max Yell's never started. He'll be the best starter in the league. Chanson Cole's from Division II. He'll be the second or third best starter in the league. Ian Korn never pitched Division I baseball. He's going to win conference games, come out of the bullpen, close games, and have a sub-3 ERA. So those are just like massive individual developmental jumps that have been really fun to be part of.
Talk about the Big 12 tournament. I know you've kind of alluded to it a little bit in regards to preparation leading into this, especially in these last 10 games, but you all will play on Thursday, May the 21st at 7:30 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time, and you guys will have to wait 2 games to figure out who you guys will play. It starts with Kansas State playing Utah, the 10-11 matchup. Then that the winner of that plays Wednesday against 7th seed TCU, and then you all get that winner on Thursday at 7:30. So when you look at this week and preparing for a Thursday night game, what goes into this week for you all, and what does this week look like in regards to preparation, both mentally, physically, and maybe a little bit emotionally as well?
From a timing standpoint, it's the same stuff, right? Thursday, Friday night game. We just played 2 of those at 6:30 p.m. And so it's 7:30 p.m. Eastern, but that's actually 4:30 out there. So 4:30 in Surprise, Arizona. This time of year means that you're playing on the surface of the sun. So probably the biggest factor is just making sure that our guys are hydrated and ready and wearing SPF 900 because it'll be warm but guys will be excited to play. Like they'll get out there and be pumped to be able to represent our university on the national stage and go compete to their best of their ability.
No, absolutely. Break to take here on the All Ears podcast. We're continuing our conversation with head coach Steve Sabins of the Mountaineer baseball team. On the other side of this break, we will talk more about a couple of players, especially Paul Schoenfeld, who had an unbelievable catch in that TCU game over the weekend. So stay tuned. Our conversation with head coach Steve Sabins continues after this break. This is All Ears.
HD Media Sports is your one-stop destination for top high school and college sports coverage in the Mountain State. From Morgantown to Mingo County, our award-winning reporters keep you informed about your favorite teams and players, including exclusive coverage of the Marshall Thundering Herd and the West Virginia Mountaineers. Follow HD Media Sports on Facebook to stay up to date on the latest news, features, and game coverage.
As the game gets faster, stronger, more dynamic, your equipment has to keep up. Introducing the Riddell Axiom, the next evolution in football protection, designed to match the speed and strength of today's athlete. Contact West Virginia Riddell representative Casey Turley at 304-552-5960. Gear up, play smart, stay protected.
Welcome back into the newest edition of the All Ears podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Kennedy. Thank you all for joining us. We're talking with head coach Steve Sabins of the Mountaineer baseball team. And, Coach, we kind of talked about it there towards the end. I know you mentioned a couple of the pitchers, but let's talk about a couple of guys specifically. Let's talk about Paul, who I mentioned in the last segment. You put out a tweet how he's one of the better center fielders in college baseball this year. What has stood out to you about Paul this season, and what leaves you optimistic on how he could end this season?
Yeah, the guy's just such an awesome story. Division II player that worked his way into a starting center field role at the Division II level. He was a left fielder, a right fielder, played center, got better, and his story wasn't five-star recruit, high-end school, Team USA, turned down the draft, right? We have those kind of players too, but his story is just as humble as they come. He just worked his way up, took a team to the College World Series at his level, played at a really high level, and then got an opportunity here and has made the most of it. And didn't have a great fall offensively for us, and played left field and played right field and played a little bit of center and showed great defensively, but the mindset and the work ethic has always been insane. And then came out in the spring and just absolutely earned every second of it. And in center field, he just lays his body on the line for the Mountaineers every night. There must be 10 catches where he's accelerating into the wall. So he has punished his body. He's been injured. He's been banged up. He's been cut up. And the play that he made against TCU likely won us the series and might have ensured us a hosting opportunity coming up. He is one of those guys that takes every play like it's the biggest play of his career. And because of that, he's turned himself into one of the best center fielders in the country.
The other guy I want to talk about is Gavin Kelly, who's leading you all in regards to batting average, batting .387. He started and played in all 49 games for you all this season with 194 at-bats. 12 of those at-bats have resulted in home runs for him. So talking about a guy in Gavin Kelly that I know you've talked highly about throughout this season, biggest thing that has stood out to Gavin about his growth throughout the course of the season?
I think that's it, the growth, like coming in as a freshman and being asked to play multiple positions. And he didn't even start every day early on in his career as a freshman and has just worked. So probably the biggest unique trait about Gavin is the athleticism. So in our sport, to be able to catch and also play a middle infield position is essentially unheard of. And so he's caught for us and played second base almost at a 50-50 clip. And one of the last greats to do that was Buster Posey. He ended up having a pretty good career in the big leagues. So Gavin really is a special dude. He was just named to the collegiate USA team that will travel to Taiwan to represent the country this summer. He is a projected top 10 draft pick next season after his junior year. And he's been able, with all this hype and all these accolades, just continues to get better. And it's hard with young guys. It's hard to do that. Sometimes there's letdown and there's expectations. And so the mentality of that player is just a special one. And there's obviously some resemblance, right? When you're talking about a sophomore who's one of the best in the country being named to Team USA that's from Pittsburgh. The last guy with that kind of track record was J.J. Weatherholt. And so we have a similar kind of player that has that kind of impact for our team, on our team right now.
Yeah, you mentioned JJ, and I know you guys went up to Pittsburgh whenever the Cardinals played the Pirates just a couple of weeks ago. What was that experience like, and what do you think that means to have a guy like JJ who's also playing alongside a fellow Mountaineer and Victor Scott, and just in general, maybe let's take it from that angle. Just having multiple guys from West Virginia that are playing in the big leagues right now with those two. You can go Alec Manoa as well. There's just a host of them right now. What do you think that means in the grand scheme of things for Mountaineer baseball and also this program as well?
It's awesome, man. We went up there to watch batting practice, and like you watch 13 position players roll out for the Cardinals to start to take batting practice, and that's when it kind of hit me. You're like, 2 of the 13 guys were playing for WVU not very long ago. So it's just like this tiny elite group. Like it's easier to become an astronaut than to do that. And so you have world-class athletes. You have the best in the world that are choosing to come to West Virginia, that are training, that are getting better. And then obviously from a recruiting perspective and from our players to see that it's possible and that the systems that are in place at West Virginia have allowed for these players to move on and have an opportunity to make life-changing money by playing a sport that they love. And so the culture gets better, the recruiting gets better, and then those big leaguers, they come back and they help continue to build this through culture and talking to our guys and donations and all those things are connected. So it's a program building moment.
You've mentioned the statistical analysis and perspective with your guys and just talking about different velocity, we've talked batting average. We've also given some statistics as well. How much of a factor whenever you're putting together your rotation and your lineup is the statistical factor, and what do you look for specifically without giving too much of a giving too much away?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's like one of those things. It's like anybody can have the information. It's more about like implementing it in the systems and the day-to-day work. Like there's not secret sauce or magic. Probably most of that analysis that you're referring to starts in the recruiting process. And then from the recruiting process, if you identify that there are weaknesses or holes or areas that need to be developed, then it turns to the fall semester. And the fall semester is essentially you're trying to address those things and you're trying to put players in a situation to be great. And so a coaching staff that knows what it needs to look like in order to be great, that's critical. And so those are arsenals and pitch shapes and velocity and mentality and competitiveness. And then it's kind of this building of a roster. And when you get to the spring, a lot of it comes down to utilizing those players in the situations just to maximize their talents. And so everybody does certain things great. And if you can get a team to buy into we're utilizing your talents to be great on the field, that's a huge piece of it. And then at the end of the day, all the analytics, all the data, all the things that we work with on every day that are critical to success long-term, those get completely thrown out in the trash can, and it comes down to trust. So the guy that when you look in his eyes and you know that he's all in for the Mountaineers, he's all in for winning and his teammates, and his best is going to actually show up on the field because he has pure thoughts and motivation, those are the dudes that end up playing and having success. So there's a little bit of a science, there's a little bit of art, and then comes down to people and winners.
You mentioned the recruiting side of things, and with that, when you're looking at a player, maybe it be in the transfer portal or even in the high school realm, is it more when you're looking at the body of work? Are you looking more at who they are as a player, or are you looking at more as to who they are as an individual away from the field?
Yeah, it starts with player and it starts with talent, because you can be the best person with the highest character, and in our sport there's a talent threshold, and so if you don't meet that talent threshold, you don't get in the door to be considered. But then after you have that, you have the stuff, you have the talent, you have the speed, you have the what you need to be good here, then it becomes basically an all-out background check and understanding of the person and the work ethic and the teammate and the character and all of those factors. And so both are critical. You can't have success without both of them. We're not perfect in the evaluations, but we do our best. But we try to certainly blend both of those pieces.
Two more questions for you, and we'll get you out of here. But when you talk about this roster and kind of going back to how we led this segment, who's been a guy in your mind that has taken the biggest leap in their game, maybe from the preseason to where we are now entering Big 12 tournament play?
Biggest leap. I'll give you two. I'll start with Paul Schoenfeld just because 3-hole starting center fielder that was an unknown player that came into the spring trying to earn a job. So that one is massive. And then the expectations for some of the pitchers were very high. And then I think the second one for biggest leap would be Chanson Cole, kind of the unsung hero, the sophomore that doesn't have the high velocity, wasn't a draft pick, wasn't exactly as sought after as some of the other players. For him to be able to do what he's done, step in from Newberry College to having a top 3 ERA in the Big 12 is a massive leap. And so that's a kid that has been incredible for us. We'll be back next year, and like our team can wrap their arms around for sure.
And then finally, I probably should have led this and asked you this in the first segment when we were talking about it, but regardless, when you look at preparing for this week and obviously the future with the possibility of hosting an NCAA regional in Morgantown, first time it would happen since 2019. But when you look at that, do you kind of have to give your players a little bit more of a sense of urgency with that, or is this just still business as normal for you all?
I think it's business as usual. I mean, the reality is you have to be intelligent with pitching decisions. And so you always have a goal of winning every game that you're playing in, but you can't do it at the cost of not being your best when competing for a national title. That's what it comes down to. So nothing more than that. So the goal of this thing every year is to be the best team in the land. And so in order to do that, you have to set yourself up and make wise decisions. And so as baseball fans and as our fan base continues to grow and understand the sport and dive in and show up to games and turn on ESPN Plus, I think more and more are starting to understand that these are humans and kids, and it's a grind. And so part of that is managing workloads and managing personalities and understanding where people are at physically and mentally. You can't go out and throw 200 pitches and then bounce back for a regional and be better the next time, right? It takes a toll on you physically. This is a sport that is probably closer to boxing than people understand, right? Like you get beat up in it, even though it's not a physical contest. Just the amount of baseball that is played and travel kind of beats you up. And so it's about going and putting our best foot forward. It's about getting guys on the mound, competing for a Big 12 title in the tournament, while being able to manage some of this workload to ensure that we put our best foot forward on this quest to go be the best team in the country.
Well, Coach, we appreciate your time, especially on this week leading into the Big 12 tournament out in Arizona. So we appreciate your time, but two, good luck in your all's Thursday matchup against whoever it is in that TCU game on Wednesday. So good luck to you guys, and looking forward to see how the outcome fares for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, thanks a ton. Thanks for covering the sport, my man, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, my friend. Thank you, sir.
All right.
There he is, Steve Sabins, Mountaineer head baseball coach. And, again, the Mountaineers will play the winner of TCU and whoever wins that Kansas State-Utah game, which starts on Tuesday. And then those two teams, or the winner of that game, I should say, will play Wednesday against 7-seed TCU. And then the Mountaineers will get whoever wins the Wednesday slate game on Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 local time out in Arizona. So, again, special thanks to Steve Sabins for joining us. And on the next side of this break, we're going to be joined by former Charleston Gazette Mail sports editor and WVU beat writer Mitch Vingle, and we will discuss our top 5 West Virginia atmospheres. And what we mean by that is you go to a game, you're like, this is one of the most electric crowds of all time. So we'll talk about that more on the other side of this break. This is the All Ears Podcast.
Oh, good gravy. The kind made from real premium sausage. The kind that's smothered over deliciousness. The kind you can only get at Tudor's Biscuit World. That's the gravy that's oh so good. It's the perfect topping to your biscuits or your taters, and even makes a delicious side It's oh so good gravy. Tudor's Biscuit World. We're dripping with oh good gravy.
HD Media Game Day is your streaming home for the best in live high school sports across West Virginia. Featuring football, basketball, soccer, and more, HD Media Game Day brings the action to you for free, exclusively on our YouTube channel and at hdmediagameday.com. When you can't make it to the game, HD Media Game Day has you covered.
Final segment here, rolling along here on the All Eers podcast, a WVU sports podcast here at HD Media. You can find us on our website, wvgazettemail.com, for all WVU coverage dating back to the beginning of last August with football season. Now we are in the midst of baseball season with postseason happening this week. Actually, the Big 12 tournament started on Tuesday and will run until the end of the weekend. WVU will play Thursday evening against the winner of the TCU game Wednesday evening. So that will happen at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 local time out in Surprise, Arizona. And throughout the course of the baseball season, with games I've gone up to, there have been several games where the crowd has just been electric, just from start to finish. And sometimes the Mountaineers win, sometimes they lose. Nonetheless, crowds is the topic of discussion today with former Charleston Gazette-Mail sports editor Mitch Vingle as we dive back and look back at some of our favorite crowd atmospheres that we have witnessed in person. What's yours? Give us a comment down below on our social media channels. You can tag us. You can send us a message, whatever you think. Just let us know what you think because this was fun. And let's welcome in Mitch now. Mitch, welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you, buddy. I'm ready to roll. This was fun trying to go back in the old memory Rolodex and try to remember all these crowds from our crazy Mountaineer fans.
I know. Well, that's the beauty of this. And I think when Ren Baker talked on Tuesday during his spring press conference, he mentioned a lot and numerous times throughout his hour-long press conference, just the passionate fans, the passion that people have for West Virginia and the people in the state have for the land grant institution. So, yeah, this was really fun looking back on this. So, with that being said, Mitch, when you look at your top five favorite crowd atmospheres that you have witnessed firsthand, what are some of your favorites that stand out?
Okay, well, there were so many, really. I'll tell you one that I don't know if you agree with this one, but I think the women's basketball crowd for the NCAA tournament this year was electric. Maybe I'm a little biased because of I was in the stands this time rather than along press row, but just feeling the intensity and the support for the women was unbelievable. An honorable mention one, I think, for football was the 1984 West Virginia 21, Boston College 20. It was, they got Flutie game, and, BC was ranked number 4. A lot of momentum, but it was, one of the major roadblocks in Flutie's career, who was famously 0-4 against the WVU. And I remember he came back. He was a broadcaster in Morgantown one time, and I remember asking him about that, and he was not happy about the question at all. But that was really neat. Matt Smith, Freddie Smalls, they sealed the deal with SAC, and it was really neat. That was October of '84. Georgetown 95 basketball. I think it was the first when West Virginia got in basketball. Remember, it was football only for a while, and then they finally let West Virginia in, and Georgetown came to town, and it was really neat because they had the souvenir ticket and everything for everybody that came into the Coliseum. So that was neat. The '83 UNLV basketball game was kind of neat because UNLV was ranked number 1 at the time, and West Virginia won. But I kind of put that aside a little bit because UNLV had just lost, and even though technically they were number one, it kind of took a little of the shine off of West Virginia's victory. There was the 82 Pitt WVU basketball game. I think there was 17,000. I think it has to be still the largest crowd at the Coliseum history. And that was when Gail Catlett, Roy Chipman, they were chirping back and forth, and Pitt was leaving the Eastern 8, and West Virginia fans always hate Pitt, but there was even more mustard on it that day. I think afterward Catlett called Pitt's program mediocre. So it was a big deal that day. My top three, I've got all football. The WVU 1993 victory against number 4 Miami. I think West Virginia was number 9, and it was just an unreal crowd, kind of a defining regular season win of that undefeated 93 season. Miami was still national power. It was the first time Miami had lost the conference game since joining the Big East. Largest crowd ever at Mountaineer Field at the time, with fans, tearing down the goalposts. Mountaineer Field was just electric. Jay Kelchner, TD to Rodney Woodard, Robert Walker going down the left sideline. It was just a really neat thing, and remains one of the loudest that I remember and most emotional nights in Morgantown history. Number 2 on my list is October 27, 1984, when West Virginia defeated Penn State, breaking the 29-year winless streak against the Nittany Lions. They were ranked 18-19, and WVU's win was secured by a fourth quarter touchdown run by Pat Randolph, and then a critical interception by Larry Holly. Afterwards, I know the old hats will remember Joe Paterno had to navigate his team off the field prematurely because fans flooded the field with, I think it was 38 seconds remaining, and Paterno called it a stupid end to a football game, but that just tells you how intense that victory was for WVU and how passionate Mountaineer fans are, that they just spilled on the field, and there was no going back after that. But the neatest one to me, Taylor, was when 1988, and this might surprise you, but West Virginia defeated Syracuse. Now, the Mountaineers were like number 4 at the time going into it, and beat number 14 Syracuse 31-9 on November 19, 1988. And the reason I say this is that capped their first ever undefeated regular season at 11-0. And it was neat because of the crowd. It wasn't so much a good game, but the stadium was packed. It capped that 11-0 regular season, and the fans were so appreciative and so overwhelmed with joy because their Mountaineers had finished undefeated. And I'll never forget, it was one of the first times in school history the team was called back onto the field for a victory lap. And I was covering the game, and I was on the field. And I remember I was so moved by what was going on that I just took my recorder and snapped it on and just recorded the crowd and what the crowd was saying to the Mountaineer players as they were going around slapping hands and celebrating with the fans. I mean, to this day, it's one of the neatest experiences I ever had as a writer. So that I don't think will ever be topped for me, because I just remember what it meant to the Mountaineer fans, and what a joy it was to cover, because of the reception and how everybody just stayed in their seats and celebrated with those Mountaineer players.
I would love. Do you still have that audio, or do you still have that from that Syracuse game?
Oh, I don't think I do. I don't think I do. And see, I don't know if it's even in the archives there, because a lot of that went away.
What a shame.
But yeah, that was one of the neatest things. Still gives me sort of goosebumps just to think back on that.
Yeah. No, that's a great list. I love the fact. So I think this is where I become more appreciative of the age gap between the two of us. Not saying that you're old, but I become more I'm appreciative of the fact that you did not stay all modern, because obviously I'm 26 years old and I don't remember what happened in 84 or 88 or whenever. I can kind of remember a little bit more of the more modern and more recent games. So so here's what I got. So you gave a couple honorable mentions. I got two. One of them is from this athletic season, and I went to the WVU St. John's men's soccer game at Dick Dalesk Soccer Stadium in Morgantown, and this was the game where Marcus Caldera had a hat trick. WVU found themselves down throughout the course of the game, and then Caldera just went stupid, as the kids say nowadays, and the electricity in that stadium, with the fact that WVU was hosting an NCAA regional in Morgantown, that crowd, whenever Caldera drilled the game-winning goal for the hat trick, it was unbelievable. I remember sitting there with other media members just being like, "This is an all-timer. This is an all-timer." And that crowd was awesome. I gotta give the roses to that men's soccer crowd. I'm gonna go on the road with this one, Mitch. I know we've talked more about Mountaineer fans specifically at a venue in Morgantown. However, 2022, WVU is playing Pitt in Pittsburgh. WVU blows them out of the water. I think it's like 81-59. Like, Joe Toussaint was the leading scorer at 18. Eric Stevenson had 15 or 17. I can't exactly remember. Emma Matthews was on that team. And the only reason why I bring up this game is where the media was situated. It was in the one of the corners of the arena. And where we were sitting, above us to the right, you just started hearing the lyrics of Sweet Caroline start playing and being sung. Then, when WVU won the game, you started hearing Country Roads. And it was so loud because all the other Pitt fans had left with about 5 or 6 minutes left in the second half. And that crowd at that 2022 Pitt game in Pittsburgh just echoed. I remember getting back into the car with my dad and my uncle. We went up together. They went to the game, and I covered the game and did it for work. They even said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, how could you not hear? I sat right below, and they said, "We heard it all out in the concourse." And I'm like, that's one of the all-timers. So those are my two honorable mentions. In no specific order whatsoever, okay? This is my top 5. You are 100% correct with your first one of the women's basketball regional. Those two games combined, whether it be the Miami of Ohio game or the Kentucky game, maybe more so the Kentucky game, those crowds were awesome. I remember looking at Spencer Ripchick from the Dominion Post, and I looked at Tony Caridi as well, who sat on both sides of me, and I vividly remember looking at Tony, and I said, I cannot hear myself think right now. That's how loud this crowd is, especially in that Kentucky game. When it got down to the wire and it was neck and neck, that place was deafening, especially sitting courtside where we were positioned. Everything just funneled down. And that's why I really love the Coliseum, because if you're playing and you're at the free throw line, you'd hate to be at the free throw line, especially in a close game. That right there was evident. So I have to mention that, because that is one of the all-time best crowds regardless of a sport, in my opinion. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to a game that I mentioned recently in one of our older podcasts. That 2025 Pitt game, in a lot of ways, people left that game. I don't know if people know that. There were people. So where I was stationed, I help on Saturdays with the Mountaineer Sports Network, and I'm standing to the right of Tony, and I'm starting to see just people leave because they go down. West Virginia goes down 10, 24-14, and then suddenly you just start seeing people leave because it's inside of 8 minutes now. And the people that stayed, it's almost like that became a core memory for so many people. Because I guarantee you a lot of the people there were probably at the 2007 game when Rodriguez lost 13-9 to Pitt, ruining WVU's chances of going to a national championship game. And you could hear the emotions from people, whether it be just absolute jubilation, whether it just be tears of joy, whatever it may be. That 2025 crowd, awesome. Another awesome crowd. And especially whenever Holstein threw that ball to probably a ghost, in all honesty, on fourth down, that whole place just absolutely erupted. I love watching the end of that game and seeing defensive coordinator Zach Alley just jump 4 feet up in the air like he's going up for a jump ball in a basketball game. I mean, my guy got up. So that's one. The other one, 2015 Kansas playing WVU inside the Coliseum. Juwan Staten hits a spinning left-handed layup. Long pass down to Perry Ellis. Ellis misses the layup at the buzzer. Pandemonium ensued. It was a miserable day in regards to weather. I remember my dad and I driving up for that game in the snow. Dad drove a Chevy Silverado. Had to put in a 4-wheel drive once we got past Big Otter. Shout out Big Otter, exit 40. Put that truck in 4-wheel drive the whole way up. I honestly didn't know if we were going to get there, but we did. That's up there. 2021 Virginia Tech. 27-21 the final. WVU gets a stop at the goal line at the end of the game. Gold Rush. Miserable day in regards to weather. It was so freaking hot that day. I remember walking out of the press box just drenched in sweat. It was so hot that day. But that was a great crowd just because of the history and tradition that the two teams have with one another. First time they had played each other in a number of years. First time the two teams have played in Morgantown. I know they played in 2017 whenever Will Greer was the quarterback, and they played over in Maryland in Washington, D.C., but first time they had played back in Morgantown in a number of years. So that was an awesome crowd. And especially, this is the other thing, too, about that game that I want to mention. That season was also the season after the whole COVID situation happened. Now, granted, people were still, wearing masks and everything else, but that to me was the first game where everything started to slowly get back to normal. Not saying we're completely back to normal, because I don't think anybody knows what normal is anymore. Regardless, that game, you could just sense that was the beginning of the normalcy coming back into play. So I like that one. Finally, this to me was another one of those games I'll remember just in regards to just the passion as well. 2019 NCAA Regional in what is now Kendrick Family Ballpark against Fordham in the NCAA Tournament Regional. They win that game, then they lose to A&M, then they lose to they lose to Duke, then they lose to A&M, or vice versa, one of the two. But regardless, that Fordham game was the first game of that regional. And I remember I had to park at that Walmart across the street from the ballpark. And I had to walk down the hill, not to that first gate, but I had to walk all the way down to that second gate across the street from the furniture store to get in. And that line was still probably 100 deep. And that was such a tight crowd. You couldn't even breathe, it felt like. And I stood on the concourse. And when WVU was scoring during that game, you could just feel it. You could just feel that energy. And I hope that Mountaineer fans are able to experience something similar to that this year if WVU is able to host a regional for the second time since 2019. So those are my 5, Mitch, with the 2 honorable mentions. Your thoughts?
I think it's, I'm thinking of while you're going down your list is that's why I enjoy our pairing on this podcast, because you look at it at a different perspective, than I do. And I think it's great because it kind of is a wide swath of Mountaineer fans that have lived through this stuff. And I just think it's great, your point of view and the way that, you kind of bring the newer perspective. And I am the old hat, and that I think makes for a great pairing on this podcast, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I again, this was a really fun one. I'm actually really glad. Shout out to you. You've had back-to-back weeks of topics. You've hit grand slams on both of them. So kudos to you. Flowers to you. Good job with this. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and same to you. I think you do a great job. So just want to let you know that.
Oh, I appreciate you. Well, my friend, I appreciate your time. Thank you. It was a pleasure going back down memory lane as we always do with you, having you back on for Vingle's Views, and looking forward to our topic next week. So be sure to come prepared with next week. So you got to go 3 for 3. I'm leaning on you now. You've gone back-to-back weeks. You got to come up with a third now.
Yeah, the pressure's on.
Yeah, the pressure's on.
All right, brother. We'll have a good week, and we'll talk next week.
Yep, absolutely. There he is, Mitch Vingle, former Charleston Gazette-Mail sports editor and WVU beat writer for the Gazette-Mail. Again, be sure to go on our website, wvgazettemail.com, for all the latest about this podcast and WVU sports. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels. The link for those are in the description, along with my Twitter handle and Mitch's. And be sure, again, WVU coverage lasting until the end of baseball season, and then we will continue on with our off-season interview series. Special thanks to Steve Sabins, WVU head baseball coach, for joining us. Again, WVU will take the field on Thursday at 7:30 as they await the winner of the Wednesday night game. And hopefully the Mountaineers can come victorious on Thursday and even this week to even further their resume and potentially host an NCAA regional in Morgantown inside Kendrick Family Ballpark. So, again, this is your host, Taylor Kennedy, and we appreciate you guys listening. Be sure to subscribe. Leave a comment. What do you want to hear? Who do you want to hear from? And we will see you all next week. This is All Ears.
You have been listening to the All Ears podcast, powered by HD Media.